Let's make a wreath out of bandanas. You're going to need a wire wreath frame, a plastic canvas, zip ties, and bandanas of whatever color you like for your petals, scissors or a rotary cutter, a mat to protect your work surface if you're using a rotary cutter, a straight edge to make your cut straight, and you might want chalk or a light colored fabric pen to mark your bandana. For your center, you can use Deco Mesh, Burlap, yarn, and more. In this video, I use Burlap, and I'll elaborate more when we get to making the center. So the first thing you're going to want to do is cut your plastic canvas down to the size of your wreath frame. I like to go to at least the first rung past the center. You want your outermost petals to be tall enough to cover the outermost rung on the wreath frame. So I attach the canvas to the wreath frame with zip ties. I usually try to have the canvas trimmed to the right side before attaching, but I did not do that in this video. It is so much easier to cut to size rather than to wing it. Next, I'm taking my bandanas and cutting the petals. I'm using a rotary cutter, but you can use scissors. No matter what you're doing, be careful not to cut yourself. You're going to want your traditional bandana that is a 22 by 22 inch square. You're going to fold your bandana in half and then cut your bandana in half so it looks like you have two even squares. Then cut your two squares in half from corner to corner, making triangles. You're going to have 4 triangles that are doubled from one bandana. You take one of the triangles and gather it together. There are lots of ways to gather your triangle to make it in the shape of the petal. I usually grab from the center and gather it from the center, or grab from each corner and gather it slowly towards the center. It all really depends on the look you're going for, and you get to play around with it to make it exactly how you want it. Once you've got your petal in the shape you like, you're going to zip tie the petal to the wreath form by attaching it to the plastic canvas. You're going to repeat until you have your desired fullness. I like to put petals across from one another and try to keep them even at first. And then as the wreath fills up, I just look for a place that seems a little bit bare. And again, that's what makes this wreath so customizable. You are in control here. You can make this wreath as thin or as full as you want. And that's the fun part. It is completely your craft. I like to do an inner layer and an outer layer of petals. I do the outer layer first, and then I do the inner layer. I feel that this hides where the outside petals have been attached to the canvas. And then again, I like to go directly across from one another until the inner layer fills out. And then I just start looking for a bare spot to attach the rest of my petals. Now we're making the center. The center is where you can be really creative. I've seen these wreaths with half foam spears. People attach the spear and then hot glue yarn to the spear to make the center. Personally, I like Deco Mesh or Burlap. In this video, I used a 10-inch wide roll of Burlap, but the next time I'm going to use the 5.5-inch roll of Burlap. They didn't have the color I wanted in the 5.5-inch roll, and I was too impatient to wait for the less wide roll to arrive. So I used the 10-inch roll, and you know, I like it, I'm happy with it, but it is so much easier to use a less wide roll. Burlap and Deco Mesh unravel very easily, so I'm using hot glue to try and keep the ends from fraying. There are other items like fray check or a wood burning tool that may help some of these items not unravel, but I always have an abundance of hot glue in the house and it works fine for me. So be careful not to burn yourself. I make a little snip in my burlap and then I grab the thread I just cut, and then I carefully pull the burlap down that thread and gather it to what I'm aiming for. So this is different for everybody. I prefer my center to be really full, so I gather my burlap a lot. From there, I use a mix of zip ties, hot glue, and occasionally a pipe cleaner to attach the burlap to the wreath to create the center. And then from there, I just coil it around in the empty space and apply zip ties and glue to mold it in the way that I think looks best. This is the same technique you would use for Deco Mesh. You just snip a little thread, do something to keep it from unraveling, hot glue or fray check, whatever you prefer, and then pull your mesh down that snipped thread until you've gathered it in the way you want. So I'll insert an image where I made another bandana wreath and I used gold Deco Mesh instead of burlap. Once you have everything attached to your liking, you're done. This wreath is so customizable because you can use whatever color bandanas you want, you can make whatever kind of center you want, and every one is different in its own way. And because of that, it makes them a lot of fun to make because there are just so many endless possibilities. So I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial and watching me make a bandana wreath, and I hope that you try it and have as much fun making it as I did. I know that this video is sped up very quickly. You can change your viewing speed in your settings to slow it down if you would like to watch something a little bit more clearer. And as always, happy crafting.